Okay, welcome to the regularly scheduled Lompoc City Council meeting, Tuesday, February 17th. Could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Mosby?
Present.
Councilmember Vega?
Present.
Councilmember Holmdahl?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dirk Starbuck?
Present.
Mayor Bob Lingle?
Here. This is oral communication. This is the maximum of 3 minutes for anyone to speak on any subject on closed session. Seeing no one rise, we're going to close oral communication. We're going to be moving into, we're going to be recessing to closed session. And we have 3 items on the agenda. One is conference with legal counsel on an existing litigation. Second is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. And the third is conference with labor negotiations for, let's see, it's IBEW and the fire department. We'll see you in about an hour. Okay, welcome to the Lompoc City Council meeting, February 17th. We are going to reconvene this meeting after closed session. City Attorney, could you give us a report?
Thank you, Mayor. You went over 3 closed session items, and there was no reportable action.
Okay, thank you. If you'll rise, we'll have invocation by Chaplain Tony Durham.
Good evening, gentlemen and audience. If you'd bow your heads. Father God, as we're gathered here this evening, we ask for your wisdom and guidance as the issues to our city are addressed. Father, we pray that you will protect our law enforcement, firefighters, our military, and those that are in harm's way. We also pray that you will be with their families and their friends. We ask for your blessings on the city and the county and to its leaders. Thank you for your presence here tonight. Amen.
Amen. Please remain standing and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, there were a few presentations prior. I presented a proclamation. No. Tony? Okay. I presented a proclamation to representatives from the North County Rape Crisis and Child Protective Center proclaiming Saturday, February 14th, 2015 as 1 Billion Rising Day. And let's see, now we'll have a presentation from our Community Development Program Manager, Christy.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, staff, and public. I'm Christy Alarcon, Community Development Program Manager for the City of Lompoc. It's my honor and privilege to recognize 3 of our Human Services Commissioners for service provided, and I'd like to present a certificate of appreciation on behalf of the City of Lompoc. Commissioner Michael Martinez, you can come up. He's like, I'm not coming. In recognition of 3 years of service as a commissioner from February 2011 to December 2014, thank you for your many hours of committed service, and I'd like to present you this certificate. Okay. I'd also like to recognize Commissioners Pamela Wall and Nicolasa Sandoval for their service as Human Services Commissioners. Neither could be here tonight, but we will get them their certificates out. Thank you.
Okay, and now we're going to have a presentation of some money from the Turducken Dinner Group to the City of Lompoc Public Library System. Would the Turduckens please come forward? Yeah.
And I'd also like to have our Library Director and Friends of Library President join us up here. While they're coming up, Mayor, Council, and residents of Lompoc Valley, my name is Janelle Osborne. I'm a member and current president of the Turducken Dinner Groups. The Turducken Dinner Group formed in 2003 with the mission to serve as volunteers dedicated to the betterment of Lompoc's libraries through fundraising activities and public awareness. With me here tonight are members Bob Lingle, Dwayne Holmdahl, April and Dennis Barker, Carol and Linnea White, Ann Jimenez, the 2014 president, and her husband, Jim, as well as, who am I missing? Okay, you're all up here, good. As well as Kathy Rudolph, president of Friends of the Library, who graciously allows us to utilize their 501c3 as a ID number for our fundraising, and Jessica Cadiente, our Lompoc Library Director. And tonight we would like to present from our fundraising efforts in 2014, a check for $10,000 to the Lompoc Public Library System. And this to date brings our total raised and donated to the Lompoc Library System since 2003 to over $160,000. So, Jessica, here is your $10,000 check. Please use it for what is needed. The Turduckens would like to thank all those who have participated throughout 2014 in our fundraising efforts. Sponsors like Denmat, Aramark, Loring Wine Company, and the Community Bank of Lompoc, as well as auction donors like Tom's Burger, Lompoc Jewelers, Sissy's, and Magnolia Massage, as your support allows the Turducken Dinner Group to donate as much of the money raised as possible back to the library directly. Be sure and save the date for our annual Speakeasy Dinner and Dance. It is this year scheduled for November 7th, Saturday, November 7th. And for more information, go to our website. Yes, we do have one. It's the Turducken Dinner Group, grp.org, or find us on Facebook. Jessica?
Thank you so much. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council, and viewers at home. Public libraries have a legacy of open and egalitarian access. The word free in that often unconsidered concept of the free lending library should not be taken for granted. And without the support of community members such as the Turducken Dinner Group, this tradition of free access could not be assured to the full breadth of our ambitions for the future. It's an exalted tradition, and the importance of which cannot be minimized. So tonight, I thank the Turducken Dinner Group. Our libraries change lives, and your donation tonight will help us continue doing that. This year's funds will go towards creating after-school programs that will enhance the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics programs at the Lompoc Library. So thank you so much.
Well, actually, that's a good example of a bunch of people getting together to have fun, and in having fun, we've raised a lot of money. Yeah. So, okay. Okay, we will now move on to a presentation by the Lompoc Economic Development Committee.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and citizens of Lompoc. My name is Janelle Osborne, and I am the chair of the Economic Development Committee. And I am here tonight to present you with an update for our periodic report from October to December of 2014. This is our current executive committee, as well as our regular committee members and our associate members. We currently have a makeup of 23 individuals with one vacant position in our associate membership. As you know, last year we increased to the additional 8 associate memberships with representation from the Chamber and the Visit Lompoc T-bid, and now have one vacant position. In striving for greater ethnic and industry diversity, the committee identified several areas to focus our recruitment on. Those areas, for instance, are Lompoc Unified School District, Vandenberg Air Force Base, the Lompoc Hospital District, and the Chumash, both as an employer and a community member. Successfully, we have recruited 2 applicants for the associate position opening, and that meet these goals. Sid Harrow from Lompoc Unified School District has shown interest in participating, and Janet Rodriguez with the Chumash University and HR Department is interested in joining our committee. So once again, what is the EDC's directive? Well, according to the city's committee handbook, it is to provide a forum for ongoing dialogue on economic issues between city government and private sector, to review business incentives, policies, and procedures of city departments that impact economic development, to identify any improvements or potential new programs that would enhance the city's economic development efforts, and to recommend potential programs and/or revisions of policies and procedures to the City Council. As part of this directive, we are tasked with annually reviewing a strategic plan, and this year we did so back in October. You all have copies of that strategic plan in your packet, as well as a link will be on the website where you can review the strategic plan in its entirety, as well as all of the supporting documents that went along with us developing the current strategic. So as you know, our 2012 strategic plan covered these goals: revitalizing Lompoc through improved marketing and communication, initiating a supportive business environment, and having a vibrant town. So when we met in October, the elements were to survey committee members regarding concerns or information needed, and we did this ahead of time. The results of this survey are in the strategic plan at the very back. Discussions of successes, setbacks, strengths, and potentials of both Lompoc and the committee were discussed during the two-day workshop. And then presentations on what is economic development and how other cities have succeeded and why were included as we requested of those that were guiding us through our workshop. We then explored ways to implement updated strategies and brainstormed and then refined ideas into manageable goals. So part of this was to identify the big issues. Our hurdles were tackling local unemployment rate, which is the highest in the county, changing the negative statements we make about ourselves, realizing every resident and business is an ambassador to tourists and potential new employers, finding funding outside of our traditional avenues, such as tax, bonds, and grants, rather than the sources we have lost recently with restructurings of such things as the RDA, and developing measurements for the success and changes in a more tangible way. So moving forward, the annual strategic plan evaluation, which we completed in October 2014, was to have more focused goals. And completing the economic development element for the 2030 general plan, which we are currently doing, and one of those highlights will be to tackle local unemployment rates, and expanding and promoting our assets through the Economic Development City Department. So the results. We revised our vision statement, and it became very, very focused, and that is to develop a strong positive image which attracts and retains businesses and residents and visitors that achieves economic vitality in Lompoc Valley. And based on this, we then refined and focused on 5 very specific goals. So our top 5 priorities for 2015 are to look into fiber feasibility. So we have a fiber optics network that runs straight through town, but we are not tapped into it as a community. So we are looking into the costs, both to business and community, to invest into and expand. We're going to engage with partners and community in discussing the benefits of expanding this network, and then present successful models for business practices. In hopes by the end of the year, maybe we will have a concept that we can tackle as a community to help deliver high-speed internet not only to our community and residents, but to current businesses that exist here, as well as those we would like to recruit, especially in technology. The RFQ satisfied. At the last council meeting, we presented the one that had responded, and this is moving forward with the ENA. The third goal is an investment vehicle and funding opportunities. So we are looking at best avenue for investment vehicles. Like many communities, we are searching for new ways to fund opportunities to help with growth. Those things like the redevelopment association no longer exist. So what are the new and more modern ways that we can create a funding system that people can tap into, whether it be loans, microloans, or a more localized organization like the Santa Barbara Foundation is. Number 4 is added capacity. We discussed who was missing in the discussion in our group and identified who those were, as I mentioned earlier. After identifying this, what we would like to do is deliver a Partners in Lompoc Economic Vitality Forum towards the end of the year. By developing these partnerships and identifying what they need in order to help move economics development forward in our community, we would like to then present it to all of the businesses in town as well as potential businesses as to what's going on and how we can move this forward. And then our 5th priority, as always, is to promote and publicize Lompoc, especially our successes. So we are going to continue to facilitate and celebrate changes in Old Town through our economic development column, which comes out the 1st and 3rd Sundays in the record, as well as deliver and award the Economic Vitality Award, or the EVA, which we just did this weekend to Central Coast Specialty Foods. They won the first award for 2015. To promote and publicize local education initiatives leading to highly skilled and qualified workforce. There are some great concepts that are in the work both at Allen Hancock and at Lompoc Unified School District. And the city's Economic Development Department, as well as our committee, are working with them to move these forward. So as these initiatives begin to roll out and become initiated in the community, we want to support them and promote it as well as partner with them. And then we're going to work with the department to update promotion packages and foster the existing businesses, because again, those that have been successful here or those that are holding on, we want to hear from you. We want to know what's going on so that we can help retain you in the community and help you grow, not just bring new businesses to town. So, having started in 2012, there are some ongoing goals we want to retain. Those are research and implement systems that provide the city and committee with information needed to make necessary decisions, continue to assist pending projects as advocates and activists, and maintain project goals listed from the first 2.5 years and monitor opportunities to move any and all of them forward. And as always, we continue to challenge our community. We want you to examine how you can contribute to Lompoc in one way. Join the trash mob, volunteer for a community, dine out once a week, shop local, hire someone from Lompoc to fill an open spot. We would like you to choose a personalized I love Lompoc statement and share it with anyone and everyone. Challenge your friends and family and colleagues to do the same. And again, when someone starts to be derogatory about our community, stand up for it, point out the great things about our community, and let's stop talking negative about ourselves. Teresa, it's your show with all the stats. That is not my area, so come on up.
Thank you. And before we jump into the stats, I also do want to mention a couple other takeaways in regard to the strategic plan that has been distributed this evening and is posted on our website as well, this updated draft of the strategic plan. In going into this workshop, we also did surveys of the Economic Development Committee members in advance, and there were some very insightful findings that came out of the surveys that you'll see when you go through the plan. And a couple of those things are, for example, our committee members that were surveyed found that the majority of them thought that we are not doing as well as our neighboring communities when it comes to our economic development efforts. Another finding that absolutely, is there for us to see and learn from is that the committee members also felt, the majority of them, that we were not funding our economic development effort sufficiently in order to have the necessary impact. So I think those two findings really struck me as things that we can learn from, and moving forward, we'll be discussing ideas moving forward at our council priority workshop next week, and also through the budget process that will allow us to address and improve upon our efforts. Now to the economic indicators, which are outcomes that we hope to see improve through our efforts, starting off with the one that continues to be a challenge and the committee has addressed as one of our top priorities, is to move the dial on unemployment in our community. And you can see here with the data we have, in December we were the highest unemployment rate in the Santa Barbara County area at 10.2%, down from where we were in July, but still something we need to continue to work on as a community. Sales tax activity, what we're looking at now is, this is a 2014 through 15 fiscal year. The green bar is our updated projection, and the blue bar is what we had budgeted. So going into budget time, I think that we're sharing that picture with you here. So we now anticipate that we'll be bringing in $4.3 million in sales tax revenue activity versus budgeted slightly just a little bit less. Transient occupancy tax or bed tax, I'm sorry the bars didn't come through here for some reason, but what we have projected, our new projections of $1.5 million, are a little bit higher than what we have budgeted for the fiscal year of $1.3 million. So that's moving in the right direction, and again, it's an increase over last year and the previous several, well, it's the highest on this chart. Property tax sales revenue activity, again, the green bar is the new projection for the fiscal year of $3.7 million compared to what was budgeted of $3.5. New business license activity, the bars didn't come through, but you can see the numbers there. And we estimate that we'll have approximately 317 business licenses, new business licenses that were filed with the city this fiscal year compared to 311 last year. Drops down considerably prior to that, and our estimation is that with the new construction, renewed interest in construction activity, tenant improvements, and the like, a lot of independent contractors and business owners pull new business licenses. For capital development activity, this is gauged by building permits issued. It represents investment in the community, and the last several years we've seen an increase in investment in building and tenant improvements. For 14-15, it dropped down, and the reason for that, so we are projecting $17.9 million as opposed to what was budgeted was $11.7. It is substantially less than what we had the previous year of $34 million, and the reason for that, we are attributing that difference to the fact that several 88 housing development permits were pulled in 2013-14, and we don't see that reflected in 14-15. Think that there was a push to get those in prior to some code changes in development, so that accounts for that. This is a tracking of business openings and closings in the last several months, and you can see here Longoria, Jail Jabez Salon, Lompoc Skilled Nursing Rehab Facility, Nika, the restaurant that opened this past weekend. Denmat is not a new opening or closing, but they did have a fluctuation in their staffing, although throughout the year they have shared with me it is stable. But in the beginning of the month they did lay off 25 folks, but again overall for the year they are consistently stable, around 340 jobs. Jasper's, as we all know and have seen in the paper, is closed, but they do anticipate reopening, so I don't see a fluctuation, a permanent fluctuation in jobs there. Kessler Hawk and Longoria, they did not create, while they're new facilities that opened, they did not create new jobs. They have stayed with the same job base that they had in their expansion. The DMV opening, that created 29 new positions. The Pizza Garden expansion created 4. The salon has 5 new positions. Nika hired 30 employees. And going back down, we have the coveted closet that opened in this time frame, and I am awaiting information from them. Something Special expanded its days of operation and changed its business model to a co-op so that they now have 8 more people that are they're selling their goods at that location. The Children's Behavioral Health Center opened up in this time frame, November 2014, and while they didn't create any new positions in their new space, they did create space at County Mental Health here in Lompoc, and they hired 13 new people for new programs that they are now offering in that space that was vacated by the children's health programs. So overall, that comes to a positive net of 65 jobs. So if you have any questions, Janelle and I are here to answer them.
Ms. Gallivan, the business licenses, several hundred new business license?
It was 317.
And those are new business, those are not renewals, those are all new business license?
Renewals as well.
Because it says on there.
Oh, all new, okay.
Those are all new business. Okay, great. That's wonderful. Any other questions? Very good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see where I am. We will now move to the City Administrator's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of brief things to report on. First of all, just wanted to make note of the fact that Tim Smith, our wastewater superintendent, retired. He was a precious asset to the city, and we appreciate his leadership. Happy he's able to retire and enjoy his life. Still disappointed in missing him, though. But just to let you know, we are underway with trying to nailed down his replacement right now. And so that's moving along quite well. I wanted to make a little statement we had on this agenda and then pulled off a matter regarding the home program, and I wanted to ask Ms. Gallivan if she just shed a little light on that and why we're bringing that at a later time. So if you don't mind.
Thank you, Mr. City Administrator. Indeed, we had prepared a staff report to present this evening in regard to a renewal of the Urban County Partnership and the Home Consortium. And we went ahead and pulled that item because last week we received new information that we need to directly request from HUD headquarters some insight and information in writing in regard to becoming an entitlement community again, and we want to have that data clearly laid out for us and for council before we bring it back to you, but we will be bringing this item forward with that more clearer determination in the future.
Thank you. And finally, just on a personal note, after a long and arduous process of trying to locate a house, I'm happy to report that we're in the final legs of our escrow period. We're due to close next week. The last hurdle we had was a home inspection. That was accomplished today, and everything came out fine on that. So I think we're just looking forward to closing, and I'll look forward to being in a regular house rather than living in an apartment. So anyway, thank you. That's all I got.
Well, thank you. Congratulations. That means our property taxes will also be going up. Thank you. We appreciate that.
No, I actually think the guy who's selling it's been paying property tax, but
Well,
not as much. You're right. So I'll help out as best I can. The house is located in the city. I know some people had some concerns about exactly where my residence was going to be located. So just want to get that on the table. It is within the city limits. Thank you.
Well, congratulations. Okay, any questions for the city administrator? Okay, we'll move on to consent calendar. The consent calendar, everything on the consent calendar is considered routine, and it will be passed. You know what, before we do that, let's have public comment. We're going to have public comment on the consent calendar. Anyone that wants to speak on anything on the consent calendar, you'll have up to 3 minutes. Seeing no one rise, we'll move to the consent calendar. And as I said, everything on the consent calendar is considered routine and will be passed with one motion unless a council member chooses to pull an item. Councilmember Humdahl.
I'll move the consent items as printed.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, let's vote. That passes 5-0. Thank you. We will now move on to staff presentation. Staff presentation on the Ohana CrossFit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, council members. This evening, I'm presenting a review of a summary of activities for the CrossFit Ohana project located on West Laurel Avenue. Councilmember Homdahl had requested this at the December meeting, and so I prepared a chronology of this particular project, which was approved by the Planning Commission in 2012, and we've listed in the chronology the activities as far as the code enforcement activities the Planning Commission has dealt with regarding a variety of noise complaints that occurred regarding the business. Those dates are listed. During 2014, the city did conduct a noise study, and that noise study, the results of it were that the business was operating within the requirements of the city general plan noise standards, and the Planning Commission took no further action. We then received a complaint regarding the business not providing the required bathrooms. So we began work with the applicant regarding that. And the last date you'll see on your chronology is December 31st. So I'd just like to advise you, since that time, I checked with the police department at the end of the week, and there had been 6 additional noise complaints in January and February against the business. And I spoke with the building official today, and we've not received anything regarding a building permit, though Mr. Savala does have until March the 2nd to submit a building permit for his bathrooms that were required as a condition of approval. So that brings us up to date as far as the status. I just went through it quickly because you did have all of the detailed information. But if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move on to oral communications. It is again your opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes on any item.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. My name is Frank Campbell, resident of Lompoc. And first I want to say congratulations to the city administrator for finally getting a house. I'm going to miss him as one of my next door neighbors, but I'll come bug you at your new location. But I just want to, talk about the presentation by the Economic Development Committee that was done earlier. Fantastic presentation. Most folks know that's economic development's my daytime job, and I just noticed some things, and I want to just echo what Ms. Osborne and Ms. Gallivan stated was, Janelle talked about the Air Force Base, and I also serve on the Military Affairs Committee of the Lompoc Chamber, and we had our meeting last week, and we had a young lady that actually is a contractor on the base, and she knows that there's a lack of something between the city and the base, so she would like to see that corrected. And she also noticed that there's this negative connotation of new arrivals in the Air Force, both military and contractors coming, about don't move to Lompoc, don't move to Lompoc. This just a bad negative connotation of the city, so that's something I'd like to see changed with the base, so definitely getting a member from the base on the committee. But I would also encourage maybe a member from the prison, because in prison or employees over 500 plus employees, and a lot of those folks do live here in the city, so that might be another person to put on the committee. But I just want to also echo that I travel up and down the state going to trade shows, and there are other cities that are present when they have booths at trade shows discussing what's going on in their city, and with Lompoc having the Public Safety Commission or Academy up there, along with the new spaceport that's going to be up on top of the hill, and the 40-acre commercial building space, I don't see Lompoc being, discussed in the city or in the community. So I'd like to see some budgeting process as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one rise, we're going to close oral communication. We're going to move on to new business. Okay.
Mayor Lingle, council members, residents of Lompoc, I'm back again. My name is Richard Drago. I live at 1327 Crown Circle over in Laurel Crossings. I'd like to start off by talking about the noise, the vibration. Unfortunately, it continues as of right now. And I'd like to apologize to Chief Walsh for having to call the police. I know they have enough to do. I've worked with enough police, both local and foreign, to know their workload is pretty heavy. And I do apologize for that. But it gets to a point where it's so overwhelming. What other choice do I have? So I went to the residents, our neighbors, and started a petition. And much to my surprise, every single neighbor, every single resident signed the petition, supporting my efforts to get resolution of the noise and vibration resolved in our neighborhood. We're not the only house that experiences the problems. I've submitted a noise log, which keeps a pretty accurate time of which times we are getting the noise. I called the police to my house on February 26th, and Officer DeLauritis, I believe is his name, was there where he did hear it, he did feel it. So it's not that it's not being known by the police. They do know it's happening. I contracted with an engineering firm to conduct a vibration analysis, which was completed, and I've also submitted the results. I did some noise testing on my own and provided those results as well. And you can see from the noise test that the decibel level is far and above the 60 decibel level that is allowed by the city. Granted, there are times when it's not, but there's many times where it is. Municipal code basically states excessive, unnecessary, and annoying noise can jeopardize health and welfare, and I'm sure we're feeling the pain daily. Not only myself, but my neighbors. There's a 5-year-old girl across the street who literally wakes up crying in the evening. That shouldn't have to happen. And the development for anybody that does have a question was approved in 2005. My house was built in 2011 prior to any application being submitted by the gym. And I appreciate any assistance we can get with resolving this issue.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. If there's someone else who would like to speak, just move forward so we don't waste any time. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, council members, this has been ongoing for quite a while. I'm a member there at CrossFit Ohana. And my name's Jay Daly, by the way. The way I understand it, the building is built 5 feet away from, you got a residential area, 5 feet in an industrially zoned area. It shouldn't be Mr. Savella's problem that we've not broken any laws, we've not had any citations, we've seen multiple visits from the police, we've not been cited for anything, there's no wrongdoing. So I don't understand why CrossFit Ohana keeps continuously being brought in front of the council and the planning commission. They've done nothing wrong. They've not been cited for anything wrong. So my understanding is either the disclosure for the noise wasn't made to the owner, in which case that's an issue he needs to take up with the developer, or it was disclosed, he understood that there was some noise, again, nothing creating a citation to the business owner, in which case he agreed to it, bought the house anyway. Again, it doesn't involve CrossFit Ohana. Or it was a approval by the city to zone an industrial area next to a residential area. In that case, it doesn't involve CrossFit Ohana. That's a mistake on the city that the city must make right. So just to put that out there. Thank you.
Let me ask you a question. Have the two parties, CrossFit Ohana and the resident, have you got together and tried to work things out between the two of you?
To my knowledge, I've not been there personally, but to my knowledge, it's been done several times. I know there's been several meetings, both with the developer, Mr. Savella, and even the chief of police at one point in time to try to get a cordial agreement made. At the end of the day, he's a business owner. He's got to run a business. And I don't like to see anybody suffering, but at the end of the day, it's not Mr. Savella's problem, is kind of the whole point of this thing. Whoever decided to make an industrially zoned area 5 feet from a residentially zoned area, in my mind, doesn't make any sense. All right, and if the homeowner knew that before he bought the house, that's on him. I'm sorry to say, but it's on him. Or if the developer didn't disclose that, then that's on the developer, and that's got to be taken up with the homeowner and the developer. In either case, CrossFit Ohana should be left out of it. We've been going through this for a year and a half now, and it's lost its novelty.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, now seeing no one rise, we're going to move on to new business. Item number 6, discussion and consideration of recommendation related to the moving forward with a concept for a new fire station. Chief Latapau.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, those in the audience, and those of you at home, it gives me great pleasure to bring this report forward to you. which simply seeks direction for us to take yet another step to a project that some feel has been languishing for quite some time. You have my staff report. The staff report's rather lengthy. What I'm going to attempt to do right now is run through a brief PowerPoint, just hitting some of the highlights and sharing with you the amount of work that's gone into this project to date. Okay. Middle button, Chris? So most of this you already know. Some of it I didn't know. I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to dig into this project a little bit. Fire Station 2 opened in 1985. Basically, Fire Station 2 is a small 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with what appears to be an oversized garage, something like you would have on your home for an RV. The property directly abuts the electrical substation. That's just to the right of that picture. This aerial from 1983 kind of gives you an idea of the siting of Fire Station 2, which eventually occupied in 1985. I believe we can all acknowledge that there's been some substantial changes to the north end of our community since that station was built. This has all been infilled now. Call volumes have been increased, and we have a ways to go with additional development. So in 1985, when Station 2 was opened, in essence, this is what you had. You had a 2-station city that even at that time was somewhat busy, and no development to the north. As we all know, since that time, we've done annexations, we've done developments, and we extend quite a ways past there. So this has been studied to death. Some of the more recent ones, maybe not to death, but extensively, sorry. Some of the more recent ones was the 2007 Olson report, which I was challenged with reviewing when you first brought me on board on the city team. In my review, we pretty much disassembled the Olson report. I looked at all those recommendations, and of all the recommendations, the fire station recommendation was one of the ones that held. It just didn't have science behind it. So what we found in that 2012 review is we had operational space deficiencies that were identified for current staffing and mission-critical equipment. If you've been in Station 2, there's little to no storage. I was talking with a reporter today, and I said, so what do you do when you outgrow storage in your home? He says, well, I put a storage shed out in the backyard. I said, come here, I'll show you ours. The current needs exceed the existing facility capacity. There's no room for future growth. This station, in my research, was built as a stopgap. 1985, it's now been in service for 30 years. Not bad use for a station. We do house our reserve piece of equipment there. As you see, in order to get rigs in and out of this station, we have to kind of squeeze them in. The one that says E3 on the right side there is the reserve engine, and engine 2 is the primary rig responding from that station. So then, one more study, and I appreciate the council bearing with me on yet another study, but I believe it needed to be done. So one of the many items out of that study was a comment from our lead consultant relative to Station 2. And you see the comment up there. I'd like to highlight a couple things. It lacks gender segregated restroom and shower facilities. The apparatus bay has limited space, and it's of an inadequate size to house that reserve vehicle, much less an additional response vehicle that we need to put down in that end of the town. Additional considerations, the master plan recommended adding staffing to meet effective response force requirements. You've heard me talk about this at previous council meetings. As the city grows, we are going to be at a point, particularly as we get that northern portion to include our new industrial park, increase activity at the airport, and several hundred homes. The demand is going to do nothing but increase. So the council was forward-thinking and adopted that master plan, and then had me come back in January 7th with some adjusted goals and objectives inclusive of those recommendations, and the recommendations were, so what priority would I propose to the council we put on each one of these items that ate up a whole big sheet of paper. So here's the comment that was in that report to you on that date. The relocation of Station 2 to city-owned property at the corner of Aviation and Barton Avenue is being considered. Response capability from the site should be evaluated, period. And that's the comment from the consultant. Now, the recommended priority is from myself and staff. We recommend the objective be given a C priority. So C priority in our plan is basically a 5-year priority. We're starting on year 2 of that plan. We recommended the needs assessment and architectural program be conducted. You see those steps right there. And once the goals and objectives were adopted by the council, staff started working immediately to meet this objective. We pulled together a team, a fire station design committee. We interviewed architects. We recommended and engaged RRM out of San Luis Obispo. Our fire station design committee was a very broad stroke, multi-representatives from within the organization. Wendy, who you all know really runs the fire department, was on the committee. Battalion Chief Mark Bray, Captain Steve Taronis was an alternate, Captain Brian Fetterman, Engineer John Steffens, Firefighter Louis Farah, and our architects, Candace Wong and Mike Scott. And Candace is here with us tonight to help me try to respond to any questions you may have. As we convene the group, my request to the group was to take a look at the master plan, take a look at our planning documents, take a look at how the city has grown since 1983, and take a look at some of our projections. Let's not design a fire station that the day we back into it, and you probably saw this quote in some of the news articles, is obsolete. That's the worst thing I can do for you as your fire chief. So some interesting dynamics are occurring right now. This is out of our master plan. This is a projection that the lead consultant did for us based on our previous call volume and taking a look at what our development was going to be. And let's see if I can make, uh-oh. Where's the pointer? Where's the pointer? So what did you think of the presentation? No. I love technology. So right here is 2014, and if I can hold this steady enough to draw a line, interesting enough, in 2014, we ended the year with 3,884 calls. I have to get, because the mic is not picking me up. So I have to stand right here, sorry. So the projections are right on. We're running a little over 6% a year. We had a little plateau in 12 and 13, but we came out of that roaring. So if you take a look at it, and I'm going to show you something later on in the presentation where we're asking you to consider a very aggressive agenda that would have us placing the new station in service in 2017. So 2017, we're going to be on our way to 4,200 calls a year, which is making me reconsider actually our staffing configuration and our deployment configuration, because to run those types of calls, you all know we put the rescue squad in service in 2014 to handle the overflow of calls. We're going to be knocking on the door of multiple calls again and simultaneous calls when we get there.
Chief,
yeah,
you're probably going to cover this, but it looks like the incidents increase about 30% over this period, and the population is increasing, what, about less than 5%. What's the reason for that?
I don't have a reason. I've been looking at this since you hired me. And I haven't come up with a good concrete answer. For some reason, our call volume is no way tied directly to population. There are some factors in there. Definitely our multifamily housing and the boom of construction of our multifamily housing played a role. But other than, I think we had 2 or 3 projects come online in 2014, we really haven't seen a lot of development in that area yet. We still had a 6% call increase. Now, as I shared with you when we had the joint meeting with the Public Safety Commission, we are now starting to see an uptick in our EMS calls, which honestly, I thought those were going to level off and start to go down. with affordable care housing as folks got insurance, because we are typically the last resort for medical care. So, long explanation, I don't know.
Okay.
And this actually started happening several years ago when we just started running calls with no population increase. We've been at 43,000, give or take, for quite some time, as the prison ebbs and flows. So progress to date. What we charge the committee with is literally leaving no stone unturned. Sit down with our architect and identify what's going to be needed, what type of support space is going to be needed, how many square feet, and what's going to go in there. And I'll show you some examples in just a couple of minutes. So the needs assessment was done. You have to have a needs assessment before you can start developing what we call the bubble for looking at other options, but also the architectural program, which will drive design. It will drive your site feasibility study and how much land we're going to need. We're done with the preliminary design. I'll show you a preliminary concept here in a few minutes. Schematic is in progress. In order to now get us any further forward, we have to do the schematic and start getting ourselves ready for the Planning Commission. So here's the needs assessment findings. I'm not going to run through these point by point, but again, to demonstrate how in-depth the team went, with always the goal on the wall. And, I shared with them at least 30 years. My preference was 30 to 50 years. This is why we're proposing a 50-year roof. I believe that what we're going to give you as we move forward is a fire station that will meet the needs between Station 1 and the new station all the way through build-out, obviously unless we do a fair amount of annexation. So these are all the areas. As you see, we've also taken into consideration a space for our police department. And prior to Chief Walsh coming on board, Chief Rawls and I talked about the value of a place where an officer could come in and write reports and do some preliminary interviews. This station has an interview room or a meeting room that can be secured that can serve as an interview space. Secured site and parking. Parking is always a challenge for us if you've been at Station 2, at shift change, when the electric utility folks are showing up, or even Station 1. We have a little bit of an overflow situation with parking challenges at Station 1 now. They identified our operational and mission critical needs. When you design a fire station, it needs to work 24/7. Quantified those building space requirements. We looked at preliminary layouts, I forgot the number, and we prepared findings on 8 site feasibility studies and also developed a project budget. Fire admin, again, looking to the master plan, looking to the future, making sure we put enough meeting space, lobby space, workspace to accommodate the fire department of the future, today and the future. Training and conference rooms. EOC operations centers. Become very apparent to us the last few exercises that our emergency operations center is inadequate. We cannot get the number of people in that room that we need during a full activation. But rather than have a single purpose room, we've proposed a nice large classroom training room where we can also do our CERT training, our CPR, our LISTOS program, which you've been hearing from me on your my weekly reports, and other classes. Doing our after incident reviews, our staff meetings, our public safety commission meetings, and making this resource available for community meetings and other meetings for the city. Fire station, you need to have enough apparatus bays to get the equipment in. This is a drive-through station we're proposing. You have to have a place for the firefighters to cook, to do all the things that they do in between calls. And I'll tell you, at the call volume that we're projecting, I'm not so sure about sleeping. And support spaces. Emergency cash storage. Today, we do not have the ability to even, take our own lessons to heart and have at least, 3 to 5 days of emergency supplies to keep ourselves going at the fire station, and the miscellaneous equipment rooms. We looked at circulation. We looked at site improvements. And by the way, these are two of our trailers. This is to the south side of Station 1. We now have a third trailer in there. We believe entry plaza and visitor parking is important. So this is going to give you an idea of what's in the program, what's in the binder. I shared that we've attempted to leave no stone unturned as far as planning. We looked at current and future staffing. Again, we consulted the master plan. We looked at operational needs. We looked at the building systems requirement. The Essential Services Act is a monster. Because it's a fire station, there are two things that drive up the cost of construction of this fire station. One is the Essential Services Act, and the other is prevailing wage. We also looked at security needs and parking. Our space outline, we've literally identified every space that we need. And there's just an example. The square footage, the notes, and every room's got a design. This just happens to be the training room / EOC. In addition, we've got ancillary rooms to support the EOC, including a communication center room that has 2 dispatch consoles, 2 call taker consoles, and space for our ham radio folks, our Aries folks, so we can take the load off of dispatch during a disaster. Every room has been identified. Square footage, what goes in the room, the furnishings list, the equipment list for every single room. So we've talked about beds. We've projected desks. We've projected lights. We've projected computers. Everything's on what we call our FF&E. The preliminary design, we explored options for building layouts, trying to get the least footprint possible but still accommodate the build-out we're looking at. And as is recommended in the master plan, and what we've found true as we look at our response times, we've paid a great deal of attention to access to the apparatus bays from the firefighter quarters. We looked at configuration, how we would lay the building out on the site to get maximum use, ingress and egress. And here are the feasibility studies we did. These are the locations. And some of these locations were brought to us by former Mayor Lynn. Some staff looked up. And literally, we took that footprint and we set it on every one of these locations. Option 1 that we kept coming back to because the other ones would not work. The footprint would not fit. The traffic flow would not fit. And so we started looking at Aviation Drive and Barton. As you know, this is the area over here where the new industrial park's going. This was designed to be a driveway, not a street, even though it looks like a street. And we proposed to have a security gate right here for access to the landing portion of the runway. We also met with, we had a pre-design with all the department heads, and we started building in the considerations for the water retention per the Stormwater Act, right? I also met with Kevin McCune and his member of his staff, and we talked specifically about this land. And I got a great education as a result of that meeting. This land was purchased. This is an entire property. If you're familiar with the property, it runs from Barton over here all the way to O by Walmart, and it's on the south end of the airport. It was purchased with FAA grant money. What that means is it's got strings attached. So the intent is that would be revenue generation sited on the property to help support the Airport Enterprise Program. So learning that, we realize, and there's no desire nor the ability to sell us the land. It would have to be a land lease. So after talking with Kevin and getting the comments from the other department heads, we immediately realized it would probably be more beneficial to own property than to do a considerably lengthy, quite expensive land lease. So back to the modeling. And the modeling brought me, first of all, understand the footprint is rather large. I'll give you that. What I shared at the very beginning is I thought we were going to come up with a 2 to 3 acre project. And sure as shooting. So we found 3 parcels that total about 3 acres. It's actually in a little better location. This is aviation. This is O. This is the short cul-de-sac here. ACE goes over here. And we really like the way this laid out on this parcel. I also like the fact that it's immediate access to O, which gives us another southerly access to the core of the city. I continued to model this. It gives us better response times over to the civilian population of the prison property. As I take a look at what direction we are headed with our adjustment to our urban limit line along Bailey, it improves response over there, and it really fits our response protocols very nicely. We do not own it. So here's what we found on options 3 through 8. They're not viable for a fire station. We have ended up with compromised emergency response and egress, meaning we're coming right into traffic that's too heavy or the flow is inadequate. Poor site circulation for the apparatus. You've already seen how we designed the circulation. The building doesn't fit. The parking didn't fit. We ended up, on some of them, actually sharing access with non-public safety issues, which lays the foundation for complaints and problems. So we did not immediately discount these. We actually spent a lot of time looking at these sites. Project schedule, I admit it's a bit aggressive. However, we've outgrown our current facilities. Our EOC is inadequate. So pre-design is where we're just completing. We're already into documentation, and you'll see our timelines here. This is where we're headed next. And then when we keep moving the project ahead, we've projected a very aggressive construction schedule, starting construction in December of 2015 and backing in and taking possession in 2017. Going back to the chart I showed you of call volume, that's actually a good time to be backing into that station. Our volume's going to be up, and the industrial site is most likely going to be coming online. And if all goes well, and I have no crystal ball, but hopefully we're starting to see the residential development up off of Harris Grade. Project budget is a big deal for us. I've heard loud and clear from some of our elected members about budgeting and overruns. Initially, we tried to phase this project to soften the cost. However, as we looked at phasing, as we looked at the construction, whatever we do, we're going to have to build the walls. Really, the only phase that saves us any money is the EOC phase. That is needed now just as much as the fire station. And hopefully we're going to ride this crest where, as the construction costs come up, we'll get this project done before they peak. Land acquisition is currently unknown. So the next steps that's in my request and staff's request to you is, obviously, we want our Public Safety Commission to weigh in on this project. It's a big deal. We put a lot of stock in their recommendations, and hopefully we'll get their support. We would like you to authorize us to start research project funding, because none of us has this kind of money in our back pocket. We would like to move forward in getting into the planning process and getting in front of the Planning Commission. And then, again, an aggressive schedule. I would ask that we return to you with the results of the Public Safety Commission review, the updated project timelines, funding strategies, and as always, we will continue to scrutinize the budget. I will tell you, we've got some escalators in the budget because, one of my concerns is making sure that we as staff bring a project in on budget on time. I shared with you, we have a design concept, and there it is. It's a 2-story. It's what we call a 4-bay 2-deep. The admin offices are over on this side over here. The living quarters, if you will, are strategically located over the apparatus bays. We have built-in storage within the apparatus bays in a mezzanine configuration, as well as storage throughout the station. And because we are always concerned about our flow and getting to the apparatus bay as quickly as possible to keep our response times down, there are, in addition to the stairs, there are 2 means of egress from the 2nd story down into the apparatus bays. So with that, some of our team members are here. Our lead architect is here. You've got my staff report. I will make every attempt possible to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, questions for Chief Latipau. Mr. Holmdahl.
Yeah, in the last setup here, design, you were talking about drive-throughs on your, would those 4 doors be considered drive-throughs or just the 2?
There's 4 doors on the back.
Okay, that's what I say. So it's a drive-through all the way through.
Drive-through station.
All right, along with the process, I know you're talking about getting this built, but also you have some work to be done on the original fire station number 1.
Fire station number 1, again, as part of our analysis, we asked for and received permission to secure an engineering study, which we did. The engineering study came back, and as a result of the engineering study, I'm using that to apply for a pre-disaster mitigation grant from FEMA in the amount of $3.5 million. It's a very laborious project. It takes a lot of paperwork. I've made it through the first hurdle. We have to file what's called a notice of intent. My notice of intent has been received. What happened, the normal cycle for these grants is they open every year, unless there's a disaster. So I already had a notice of intent on file, and then the unfortunate earthquake took place in Napa County. So as soon as the presidential declaration was made, that changes the landscape, and it opens another opportunity. So I immediately filed another notice of intent coming in on the heels of that disaster declaration, and I was informed last week that that notice has been received, which means we go to the next step. So when they're done paying the bills, this is a rather simplistic approach, when they're done paying the bills in Napa County, they see what's left, and I believe we've got a pretty good proposal to get a pretty high priority. Until we get that grant, we do not want to open a wall or pull a permit on Fire Station 1.
Okay. The only other comment I had, your presentation was excellent. As you're looking down the road, when you're building this is to handle everything that is zoned now within inside the city limits or projected to be inside the city limits. Is there anything in it that says for the future past that?
Well, I've taken a look at our urban limit lines. I've paid very close attention, obviously, to the projects that are being discussed and the ones that look like they're coming in. And unless we annex past Bailey, and actually even then we can still serve, unless we annex substantial land to the north, we will have no problem serving the urban limit lines and the development that's being proposed right now, and the ones we already have on the book that have not been built yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if I might just add to that as well, I think it does address our understanding as we know it today. But I would also point out there are some uncertainties that I think we're pretty well aware of. So if you really thought, as they say, outside the box, if you really start looking big, for instance, at one point within the last year, the county was asking about whether or not the city had considered expanding dramatically to include Vandenberg Village, Mesa Oaks, Mission Hills. And if we start getting into discussions like that, it's well beyond what this capacity talks about. In fact, though, if we get into those sorts of discussions, then I think we're also putting their fire station that's located up there on the table as part of the discussion points. But that is a pretty, that's a very, I think, a farther out there view. I think it's hard to think realistically about those things right now today, but I know it's sort of on the back burner there in a lot of people's mind.
So, if I may, as a follow, let me let you get into my head a little bit on the apparatus layout. So the day we populate this station, we do what I've wanted to do since January of 2014. We move the rescue squad down here. As the industrial park comes online, that's the point where we look into the master plan to start staffing the ladder truck. Once that happens, a rescue squad comes back to Station 1, and the ladder truck personnel are used to cross-staff another rescue. We can handle the city with 2 stations as we're currently configured. The biggest challenge is making sure we're efficient and we have the right type of response vehicles.
Councilman Starbuck.
Yes, Chief. Just a couple of comments, and you kind of touched on it briefly. You know, we're talking about a very large capital improvement project here, and like you said, our reputation as a city for successful completion and coming in under budget is pretty bad. So I know that citizens are suddenly perked up and paying big attention right now. This isn't about funding your station, but what the question I'm going to have here is 3 acres of industrial ground is basically what we're looking at out there. That's a lot of property. On the other hand, we have just purchased property across the street from Station 1 with no intended use now. It's obvious we're not going to use this property for anything more than parking and storage on a temporary basis with a barn that's there. I'm just kind of wondering, where I'm going with this is here we build a pool, we still have an old pool. We're going to have a new station possibly. What is our intent to do with Station 2, the property across the street from Station 1? What are we going to do? We've got to do something with these assets, so to speak.
I'd like to see us develop the property across from Station 1, not necessarily into a fire station, but to handle our overflow. We already have overflow parking. The barn that's there does not store temporarily vehicles. We currently have backup vehicles in there because we have no other place to put them. As we move forward with these 2, repurposing that property, I think is something we should be discussing in the future. We use that lot, as you know, for special events. That's actually what our permit is for, not for parking. I'd love to be able to fence that lot in and make it a nice property with covers for some of our trailers. You brought up Station 2. I'm glad you did that because I've had an inquiry, and we have the ability to generate revenue from leasing Station 2 out. AMR, part of their business plan has been that as cities move out of old stations that no longer can accommodate the workload of the fire department, AMR comes in and leases them from the city. Santa Maria is the most recent case. They lease old Station 3. AMR has expressed an interest in leasing Station 2 from us to improve their response program in our city. So that's actually, I think, a pretty good win-win. You're talking about, when we talk about the lot opposite Station 1, so here's Station 1 right here, okay? This white shadow right there is the building we currently use that houses our backup brush rig, our backup battalion chief vehicle, our parade piece, and some other equipment. I have, been encouraged to take a look at that lot. And in all honesty, I'm not sure what the original plan was for the lot when redevelopment purchased it. I wasn't here. What was it for?
The price is right.
The price. Well, there you go. But I did strip out the admin portion of the new station. So I asked our architect to give me an idea of what it would look like. Well, first of all, it has to go to 2 stories because the lot is just a little better than 1/4 of an acre, and Councilmember Mosby has shared with me, thinks it's more like 1/3. As you see, this footprint of this 2-story, 7,000 square foot building is right on the lot lines. Why is it on the lot lines? Because we have to accommodate parking and we have to accommodate storm water retention. What's not here is an accommodation for a generator or the overflow parking that currently is challenging us from Station 1. So I did take a look. I mean, we own the property. I'm trying to come up with a good use, a return on investment. So let's say we take a look at the lot opposite Station 1. We end up with a 2-story structure. The EOC has to go to the 2nd floor and also some of the admin. There's not enough room on the 1st floor for all the proposed admin. It's going to have a generator. We have to pay attention to parking. Stormwater retention will be a challenge. And yes, we've already talked about an impervious treatment for the parking lot to try to get away from some of the retention requirements. We would still need to build a new station. We would still need to build a new fire station 2. It would still need to be able to accommodate a ladder truck, a rescue, a primary vehicle, and reserve. And when you take that into calculation, so what we do is we knock off the admin section, we knock off 1 bay. We still have a 3-bay, 2-deep station capable of housing all the necessary people, the offices for the crews, and it's very similar to a station that Oxnard is currently building for $12 million. I've tried.
Actually, that vacant lot, I think I was the only one on the council currently when that was purchased, and Councilmember Humdahl was right. It was a good price at the time, but it was actually purchased for exactly the use we're using it for right now. There was no place for us to store our excess vehicles and also parking for the staff. And so it's being used exactly for what it was purchased for.
Also, that the landlord at that time was doing a lousy job of keeping it up.
Oh, yeah.
So the fire department took it over and we cleaned it up.
We took it over. We invested some of our, I forgot the name of the funds, and firefighter labor drug that lot out, based it, and we're getting ready to make repairs to the fence now and trim up the hedge. I have to be really careful with our temporary use permit. We're
using it for special events,
right? Yes.
And Chief, I think you realize at one point there was an old abandoned house on that property that was literally falling apart. So it cleaned up an eyesore, and it was purchased for the extra storage. So. Yeah. Councilmember Mosby. Wait, you're new.
Must be late. It's almost 8 for Bob here. It's about 8. Yeah. It's all right. We understand. Getting late. Yeah, we had a couple meetings discussing potential movements. And as a size comparison to the other counties, it looks like we'd probably be building the biggest footprint for a fire station in San Luis and Santa Barbara County.
For a headquarters station, I'm not sure. I haven't compared their headquarters stations.
Hey, Santa Barbara's, where's their headquarters station in Santa Barbara?
Santa Barbara County's headquarters station.
The city of Santa Barbara.
Oh, the city. I've been to that station. It's landlocked. They've gone upstairs with it. They have access and egress problems. If they have to grow, I don't know where they're going to go with that station.
No, what I was just getting at, it's going to be it's a huge footprint. It's 3 acres. I know stormwater is an issue. Is there a reduction of stormwater? There's a size square footage. There's a 5,000 square foot number on a building for, right, Lucille?
Sorry. That's correct. The building, however, is going to go over that. And It's going to be a challenge, but certainly we can work with the architect to make sure that the stormwater is handled on the site.
Right, but if we had a 5,000 square foot building or less, there's different restrictions, right?
Well, but you still have parking. Any hardscape counts towards that 5,000.
And that's where the impervious material could come through for the parking, but obviously you're not going to have an impervious building, right?
Correct.
So getting back to the lot across the street, I think you had that, if you had that picture up there on the lot on G Street, because you marked a 7,000 square foot building you needed, but you used a 7,000, and you said it's going to be 2-story, so it should be a 3,500 square foot footprint. But you marked it as a. So if you went 2-story, it'd be half that size. So we just gained another 3,500 square foot on the lot.
I'm wrong. Candace?
Good evening. Good evening. I'm Candace Wong with RRM Design Group. The 7,000 is for the admin offices only. The EOC, which is another almost 3,000 square feet, is projected to be on the second floor. So we've already kind of doubled up a little bit. Granted, you could push more upstairs and get that 7,000 down a little bit more, but you can't split it in half.
How many square foot of administration do you have right now? I mean, in touring Station 1, do you have administration at Station 2 right now? No. So in my analysis, you probably had about maybe 1,500, 2,000 square foot currently of administration.
That we're all doubled up in?
Yeah,
I think
well,
that's
I have office buildings where people are tripled up in, so I mean, there's.
Yeah, that's generous.
But it just seems like you're tripling up on administration, square footage wise, without our town tripling up. And what I'm getting at here is it seems like a lot of building, a lot of fire station, a lot more than I think we really need. I would like to see, in getting back with one of my reasons for having administration also going on G Street was to keep administration closer to City Hall, as opposed to putting it all the way out 2 miles away from City Hall. It seems like it would be advantageous to keep administration close to.
And that's what I tried to do. And understand we've been working on that secondary plan over the weekend, so I'm not as versed on that as I am on this. I keep going back to, I'm staff. I take direction. My recommendation is we build a facility that will serve the community well into the future, not one that will only serve us partially. One of the reasons we've set on this 3-acre site, again, is for future expansion. We can do that on a 2-acre site. Those are 3 parcels. So, but rather than chop it up, we took a look at the ability to do future expansion, which we couldn't do on the airport site. Having the administration in a separate building from the fire station, some people do that. It still has to be built as a critical facility. It still has to have a generator, and we have proposed to you office space that will grow with the city.
If the building is separate, because the hospital ran into this, right? When they built certain portion of the hospital, they were able to reduce the style they had to do as opposed to some parts of it, and they were able to reduce the cost quite a bit because it wasn't the way they did it, correct? Mm-hmm. So would that come into play here as well, the same way, Lucille?
For the new station?
Yeah, say we built the administration building separate from the fire station, are there certain specs that would reduce the cost of build-out? Because I know they did that with the hospital.
The fire station still has to be built as a critical facility. It still has to have a generator. It still has to have office space for the captains.
I mean, the administration building. If you had the administration building separate from the fire station, would you still have the same?
We'd be building a station similar to what Oxnard is building right now.
But with the specs for the administration, if it was commingled as one building, you'd have these intensive specs. If the administration building is separate, it would reduce the specs, if I'm understanding. It did with the hospital. It wouldn't reduce it with a hospital. It works that way, but not a fire station.
Councilmember Moses, maybe I can help with this. When the hospital was built, the hospital is actually 2 buildings. Probably most people don't realize that. One is for non-critical or non-essential services, cafeteria, human resources, as you're looking at the building on the left is for critical services, the inpatient services. I think what the chief is telling us is that the entire fire department is considered critical services. You are like a hospital is not required to have that cafeteria over on that side. There's a cafeteria on the critical side of the hospital too. Many people don't realize that. So I think the chief, you're saying is that the entire building is considered critical services
because of the nature of it, and if we're going to do opposite Station 1, we still need the EOC, and that's what rolls us into a lot of those requirements as well. So staff is prepared to do whatever our direction is. We will have to go to redesign, obviously, and I keep going back to we still need that number 2 station. So Oxnard's building a 3-bay station that basically, if we strip out admin, that's what we end up with, and that's $12 million. This building right here comes in at about $6.8 million.
Okay, you said you need your EOC, and we have EOC across the street. What is the downfall with the?
You mean what happens if we don't?
What's the problem with our current situation? It's too small.
It would be a shorter list to maybe cover what's right about it. It's the telecommunication. It was built in a time that precedes anything that we rely upon today in terms of communications, telecommunications, and emergency planning. There is not the infrastructure of support. There's not the physical space. It is inadequate in every way. It's I don't know. It's putting. I think we've worked miracles there in our actual emergency responses that we were able to pull off what we had, and we really had to bleed over into other areas and disintegrate what is supposed to be a more unified command area. And in addition, in our practice areas, we found that we're just, we're having to restrict what we have as essential staff in the room just because it can only support so much. So we're limited on having communications out in the field and the outside world, and just being able to support things as simple as computers and being able to have internet access and be able to post and send out information update to the public in an emergency. I'd say if you name an aspect, it's inadequate. In response to the questions overall about admin, I'd say, first of all, I appreciate the questions. I think they're good questions. I think they should be asked, and we should have this discussion. In my estimation, because ultimately these recommendations don't come forward without my blessing, so I'm stepping into comment only because I'm ultimately responsible here. And I am looking not only at the present needs, but to the future needs. And in our bringing presentations to you, I was pretty impressed at the fire staff and their entire team that looked together and really they broke it down to the individual unit of looking at what are the functions that need to be done, how much space is needed for that, where can functions overlap, and taking as tight a view on a development of a project like this that I've ever seen in 20 plus years of doing project oversight. And I just want to point out that this isn't a willy-nilly recommendation we're doing. It's with a lot of examination and paring down and slicing and getting it tight. But at the same time, my only recommendation, I believe the chief's only recommendation and the team's only recommendation to you are going to be those things that not only bring us to minimum levels. We are inadequate now. It's not just to bring us to where we are adequately today, but to do some foreplanning, because realistically where we're planning in every other aspect of what we're doing and where we need to be in the next 25, 30 years, and we're trying to right size for that as well. Anything else, I think we're going to find ourselves to be making investments, greater costs, greater investments than we otherwise will. And in this case, looking at building 2 buildings, since we need, it's our belief, we need a new fire station anyway, and we need to right-size that. We can more cost-effectively do that in one location with admin, with EOC, than we can doing this 2 separate buildings. It's worthy of, I think it's a valid idea to look at. It's worthy of discussion and debate, but just wanted to be clear that what we're bringing forward isn't like, oh, we just went, shopping with a big want list, and we're just bringing forward everything we want to have. This has been vetted out quite a bit to look at what does it take to get us through and do essentially what's needed, but at the same time, looking ahead and making sure we're sizing for the future. The EOC is a good example of that.
And, thanks for the response on the EOC, because the way it was kind of glossed over earlier just sounded like, it was this and that. So, that was kind of why I'm asking the questions, because this is, Lompoc again has had the chance several times to build places that maybe are, as we've uncovered in the last year or two, we have a wastewater plant that's twice the size and ready for our double anticipated growth, and we have a water plant that can do much the same. So, that's why I'm asking these questions and putting them on the table, because I know there's a lot of other people who want to know, well, what are we doing?
They're great.
So that's why I'm not.
They're great questions. We're not taking them as argumentative or anything. They're questions and things we should ask and examine. I just wanted to give some assurance that that's exactly what the team has done all along the way, and we'll be exhaustive with you in going into the detail, as much detail as you're willing to absorb. We can go into great detail when the time comes for asking you for approvals to go through the level of detail, because they were very patient with me, this whole team, as we went through what at times is a painful process to make sure we examine the particulars in full detail.
I think I like details, so there's no problem there.
I've heard that.
I opened a few cabinets and refrigerators when I was over there checking things out when I was there, I made him open certain things. Even checked out the water heater, make sure it was strapped in right. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Humdahl.
Yeah, to follow up to one thing too, you brought up the idea of how big that lot is. At least it's future thinking. If you build it just to fit what you need today, you're still going to have to go out and find the property 30, 40 years down the road. I think that's the one thing he has done by consolidation. You got to remember the fire station we have here in town had both city and county fire trucks in it at one time. It just isn't. And now we have got them kicked out. They built their own. But the idea of what they went through and looked at and put together and utilized it at the best advantage, not one issue, but they did some changes. And the idea, the size-wise, are looking down the road, which we haven't done in the past in any of our facilities. So that's what I'm real pleased about.
Thank you.
If I could add one other thing, and I don't want to distract from our discussion focus tonight is indeed on giving you an update of where we're going with the fire station. I wanted to put it into context that also, because as we talk next week about our priorities, we wanted to give you some information about this so we can start, this is obviously a very significant project for Lompoc, and we want to make sure we have this as part of those discussions as well, because ultimately when we get to tackling our budget considerations and things, we're going to have to start getting real selective about which dollars we're spending and which dollars we're spending first. And so we want to make sure we do this in the context of having this very important piece fresh in your minds as we move forward on that. I would also point out that while I am normally, my default is to be debt averse, and we reserve debt for those things we just can't avoid and don't have the opportunity to pay as you go, like when we build large-scale water plants or wastewater plants. Unfortunately, in this case, this is just something that the only way I see a path to be able to afford this within the time frame that we need to deliver it is going to be taking on a good chunk of bonding of debt by issuing a bond and being able to have to make payments over time. And I'm normally opposed to that, but again, I get comfort when I look at what's being delivered in terms of services and safety for the community. I would also say that since we are doing that, not to go on a spending spree, but it does also give us the opportunity, because this is a big enough project to support a bond underwriting. You don't normally do that for smaller amounts. It doesn't make sense, for instance, to bond for $1 million if your bond underwriting is going to cost you $140,000 no matter what size bond you issue. And it does give us the opportunity to tackle one or two things, perhaps, that we've needed to do, but we just can't come up with the cash. I know I've been working and talking with Chief Walsh over the property room, for instance, that's in our currently in police headquarters, and we have to come up with some solution for that. That is just something that was established at a time when we were a much more modest community, some modest-sized community, and the nature of property rooms is sometimes you collect and accumulate, particularly if you don't have the right, not only the right space, but the right systems in place to keep those things fresh and updated. So we will probably, just being open with you, probably look for also other opportunities to piggyback some of those other solutions with the financing here. I don't want it to cause a distraction to talking about the station itself, but I do want to say we're going to be, when the time comes and we get down to talking real money, we will be wanting to couple this or piggyback it with a couple other things.
Just one question. You mentioned the property room. I don't know if you covered it here, but the new proposed fire station would also have room for additional, for the police department's property storage, evidence room, and then relocating the EOC to that location would free up space at the fire department, which is also overcrowded at this time. So we're kind of benefiting both public safety buildings at one.
I think there's a benefit to both of us. I won't speak on behalf of the chief. I know. Sorry. The EOC is currently multi-purpose, and I don't know if he could do without it, but that's up to Chief Walsh. We did footprint a rather large future facility here, because I was listening to the chief talk about, I don't know anything about property storage other than the fact he's got a lot of it. And so we did footprint a potential future facility here.
Okay. Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah, Chief, just real quick, I have a question under staff recommendations here. Number 3 on the recommendation was, consulting in order to provide funding to continue the design phases and preparation of development plans. Number 4 says submission of the project to planning. Are we that far that you want to send it to planning already? We haven't even acquired land or anything here.
Between now and April, I think we can submit it. We can submit it to planning with a concept for the land. I need to know what conditions and things that we need to further build in to the project, right? I can submit without a land.
We have to select a site, but you don't have to.
Right. So, yeah, I'm asking you to let me spend impact fees to get us to the next step. Part of that next step is I'd like to get in that planning pipeline.
Okay. Councilmember Vega.
Yeah, Chief. I was wondering, when you're looking for sites and other options, it looked like you had a handful of options, but was there any consideration as far as to evaluation of property when this site was chosen, or was there any other plan B or C besides this site, or is this the one that we're looking at? Obviously, we haven't negotiated any land value or anything, okay? So that's my question.
Yeah, we haven't negotiated land. Understand you've seen what goes into siting. There's a piece that you haven't seen, but some of you have seen from me before, and that's the actual runtime modeling. So there's certain combinations that work, and there's certain combinations that don't work. It's all a balance of your station locations, your street, your access, et cetera. I have not looked, well, we drive around looking all the time, but other than those options, other than those ones I listed for you, land, even if we only go to 2 acres, 2 acres of available land within this area that'll provide us a decent response is almost non-existent.
One more question, okay? As far as response times, should the new station be located out there? Have you guys already calculated, what the benefits are on some?
Yeah, I have. What this new station does for us, if we go all the way back to some of the modeling I've done previously, we've got areas of town out the west side that don't meet our current criteria. One of the areas I mentioned is the civilian population of the prison site. What this does is it gets us to that civilian population within the performance criteria for the whole city. It also, when I modeled it, I took a look at the development up the hill. It meets the performance criteria for the 300-400 homes. How many are going up on Burton Mesa?
476.
The 476 homes that are going up on that project. So those are all within that response footprint, those performance objectives that you've directed us to adopt. It improves it to the west, it reinforces it up O, and it's just a really great balance.
I have one more question, okay? I do have one more. As far as equipment needs and staffing needs for the new station, okay, it sounds like we're going to have an oversized building at the time. We're looking 30 years in the future. So basically, how is that going to be? The extra space is just going to be kind of a ghost town there for about 10 years. Is that correct?
2017, when we occupy the station, first of all, the master plan has already found we're deficient in our staffing patterns because we have to rely on Vandenberg for an effective response force, and sometimes it takes, well, they don't meet the response times for the effective response force because of the travel time coming off the base. As the industrial park comes up, that's when the ladder truck needs to be staffed full time. So if the industrial park is up in 2017, the ladder truck's going to go down there because that's where our, what we call our high fire flow areas are. That's where our large square foot buildings are. And those, it's not all about stories that drive the need for the ladder truck. It's also about fire flow and being able to put an aerial stream into operation. So the aerial truck will go down into one of those slots. So you're going to have an engine, you're going to have the battalion chief, you're going to have the aerial truck, and within 12 months of moving in, well, you're also going to have the rescue squad. So we've already filled most of the holes, and the backups are filled by reserve apparatus. So it's going to be far from a ghost town. But we will be able to shout from one end to the other and hear an echo. No.
Anything else? Okay, we'll move to public comment. This is your opportunity to speak for 3 minutes on item number 6, fire station. There we go.
So you know the right.
Mayor, council members, John Lynn, Lompoc resident. There's no question that Fire Station 2 is too small for future needs or probably even today's. There's no question that Fire Station 1 requires an earthquake retrofit. Land across from Station 1 was purchased to provide additional storage and free up space in the station for other uses. But there are some important questions that aren't answered yet. First, this council must decide if we want to locate our fire headquarters away from the downtown and the civic center area, which has been our focus for decades. Second, the fire staff has looked at those choices and feel that they have the best one, but this council should add this decision to the workshop and see if the relocation is in the best interest of the city and downtown. The council must decide if we want to spend $15 to $17 million on a large new fire headquarters facility, or much less on an update to Station 1 and provide space across the street. The city general fund has numerous infrastructure needs, including the police department, parks buildings, the fate of the old pool, and all of those will require bond funds In the past, the city administrator has spoken, and today he mentioned again that those needs need to be reviewed along with city surplus property to bring a comprehensive plan together, which I think you could all do at the next workshop. This is the process that should be followed to balance all the needs against the cost for the city's general fund ability to cover the bond payment. At a minimum, any decision on the expenditure is premature until the budget is completed. We've gone through 3 budgets that required significant cuts, and the most recent one, we used $1.4 million in reserves to fill the deficit and eliminate furloughs. Remember, city staff has sacrificed and been promised for 6 years that when the general fund improves, their pay would be addressed. And I took the liberty of creating a list of all the various improvements that have been discussed by current and prior administrations over the last 4 years that could be addressed with bond proceeds. So you have a workshop coming up, and it would be a great opportunity to, number one, decide if we want to relocate our fire headquarters out of downtown and change our long-term plan, and number two, which of these things we would also like to address. So as an example, a new EOC could be built above the police department parking lot, as was discussed many years ago. We had plans once upon a time, and keep that in that central location and eliminate that cost from the fire station, since the dispatch center is already there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynn.
City Council, I'm Will Schuyler, I live in Lompoc. History repeat itself? Yeah, it does. I remember sitting in two of those stations up there. Kind of the same subject came up. It was encouraging to see Chief Lompoc come. He not from Lompoc. He didn't grow up here. He kind of come into town and surmised what he feels would be needs of the town. And several times when we went to league meetings or something, they said, a lot of times when you go back to your city, stop about 3 miles from your city, stop on the side of the road and just let your mind go open, and then pretend like you're going to your town for the first time and see what you like and what you don't like, what you think is neat and what isn't. Where I'm going with all this is this is a particular project. We've talked years about Station 2 and where it ultimately will reside. But what's bothering me and what's eating at me is there a plan for the whole thing? I know we tried trading some land with the county to take the county building because City Hall here was too small. When the hospital deal come up, we tried working with them to get trade property at the community center for additional land there. Your city parking lot over here is still on city park land where a park was supposed to be built. Are you maybe a little short-sighted on this, jumping ahead on this thing? I'd rather see you maybe spend another $100,000 and $200,000 and come up with maybe a 30-year or 40-year plan for what Lompoc's going to be. Is there a way of combining some of these buildings together and building them instead of this building this year and then that one next year and the year after, you end up spending 10 times as much money as you could if you built one large facility that did most of it. So I one time entertained buying from 8th Street to East Street, from Central or from Laurel to Chestnut. Most of that property was for sale at one time, and put a new city hall, a new fire department, a new police department in the city pool there. And Dwayne and the council member Holmdahl and I worked on it. It never did go to fruition, but if we had gone that, we wouldn't be having this discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schuyler. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one rise, we're going to close public comment and bring it back to the council. Any further questions, or anyone would like to make a motion? Oh. Councilman Starbuck.
I'd like to go ahead and I'll move staff recommendations on this. You will, it says here, return no later than April 7th. You will have an update on what we're doing, approximate cost. We hope it's nowhere near the $100,000 you're asking. Will that be included on the April 7th?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I'll move staff recommendations.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Mosley.
Yeah, you got my card there?
Yeah.
Okay. Just a question. It kind of goes back to what Councilmember Starbuck said about the advancement all the way to number 5, 1 through 5. I mean, you're authorizing the submission of the plans. What about seeing the plans before you're authorizing the submission of the plans? Shouldn't that come back, 1 through 3 get done? Shouldn't, maybe 4 come here before 4 get submitted?
These aren't the final building plans. These are the preliminary plans, if you call them, for submission for review by planning. So, exactly. So you're welcome to, but I think we're going to have to change timelines then. If that's what if you want to review those before our submission, then I don't think April 7th the time we're going to be back to.
I'm just asking. I know you're going through 1 through 5, but I think your comment earlier in the evening about questioning 4 and 5. I think it might be good to see what the plans are going to be submitted. At least have them on the table for us to look at or something. Whether that was just an idea that I was reviewing, because it seems like there's a lot of stages here. 1 through 5 is it's doing a lot.
Would you like to be copied on what we're submitting for review? Does that help resolve?
We have a chance for discussion. I mean, we'll see something. Where do we can discuss with you, obviously, but is it something that's going to be reviewed to the public, or, maybe the public wanted to see these plans before they're getting submitted to planning as well?
Well, my concern is only a matter of it's a little premature to get that many cooks into the kitchen. I think we want.
I think you're asking all these cooks to help pay the bills, so maybe the cooks want to take a little look at it.
Well, unfortunately, we have a representative form of government recognizing that when I understand I help pay the bills, but we have a representative form of government for the reason to accomplish the efficiencies of getting a project like this through the works.
If I may add a point of clarification, that should have said Planning Commission, which is a public meeting.
Okay.
Sorry. That was the intent.
I guess that initiates the discussion anyways. It's going to the Planning Commission.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we vote? And that passes 5-0. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good job.
Okay. Madam Clerk, do we have any written communications?
No written.
Okay, we have oral communications, up to 2 minutes. This is your last opportunity to speak to the council on any issue you so desire.
Good evening, Frank Campo. I just want to say that's a good presentation by our fire chief. And as the vice chairman of the Public Safety Commission, we currently have 4 members. And I'm sure this item will come up at the next meeting in March. So hopefully we'll have that 5th member seated so we can discuss it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to... Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. I would just like to clarify a couple things. One being that the test that was done, the noise test, was very subjective as to the location of the microphone, the height, and the actual direction. I've been involved in a number of acoustic tests involving submarines, so I know a little bit about noise and vibration testing. And the other thing is that as far as the disclosure is concerned, if you go back and look at the initial application that Mr. Sevilla had submitted, there's nothing in there regarding the amount of noise or vibration that they create. This is not a unique situation. This is happening all over the country. And as this fitness fad starts growing, it's going to happen more often. So there's a number of these gyms that are being closed down because of their location or their proximity to residential areas. And the complaints, if you look at the submittal I gave at the last meeting, it is exactly the same. Vibration, noise from weights being slammed and dropped. So this is not, like I said, this is not a unique situation. Oh, I'm sorry, Richard Drago.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I have a question. Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Jaga,
Yes.
you know, as a property owner there, was it disclosed, or is there any local disclosure there going on now because of this gym now for purchase of the homes? As far as you know, I know that you're a resident, but you know, you can only cover your eyes so much, okay? And that's the question I'm asking, okay? You guys can say, hey, you know, whatever, but my question is, as far as anybody else purchasing a home there, to your knowledge, is this a disclosure?
As far as I know, it's been brought up from prospective buyers asking, because they've heard about the issue, whether it's in the paper or on TV. I don't know to what extent it's being disclosed. Yeah. And it was disclosed to a certain extent to myself, but there's 6 other homes that I could tell you can be, with the homeowners could be standing here today giving you the exact same complaint that I'm giving you.
Yeah, and I'm not taking sides, but I just wanted to know if there was. You said there was a minor disclosure, so that we know if there's a noise, okay? My background, you know, I know a little bit about this, okay? So on the other end, okay, so usually with a disclosure, it seems like, is it affecting other people that are purchasing homes in that area, or is it just because you're so close right there in that one proximity, okay? You know what I'm saying?
Well,
it looks like it's really difficult to cure this issue, you know, with it looks like if the business doesn't leave, it's not going to cure this issue, okay? And that's what I'm getting at. You know, it seems like we're beating our head against the wall because it seems like you're saying, well, we got to do this, we got to do this. We can have them put in 5 bathrooms. It's not going to cure the cause.
Exactly. And
okay, I'm just getting right to the point here, okay? Because
right.
what are we looking for? We're looking to displace this business here because it probably can't be fixed. Is that correct? I mean,
can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
You know, are we looking to displace the business because, and then what happens to the next business that comes in? You know what I mean? It sounds like you got caught in a catch-22 is what I'm saying, you know?
Unfortunately, that is a problem because, I mean, you can't just be selective as to which businesses come in. I mean, it would be nice just to have a winery or storage come in there. That's not going to create the type of disturbance that you would have come to expect. But there is a metal fabrication shop that is next to the gym that we don't hear nothing from. And I know they're creating, well, I know what they're doing in there. I've gone over there and visited. But it's the actual force when the weights are dropped to the ground that's creating this seismic energy that is literally transferred to 6 different homes. And unfortunately, there's not much that can really be done. I've done a little bit of research as far as, you know, there's padding out there that they can use. That's a fairly dense foam padding. Unfortunately, the people that are, the gym owners are saying, hey, we're still receiving complaints, even though we're spending thousands of dollars on this padding. So there's a number of recommendations out there from whether it be attorneys or just people giving their 2 cents saying, save yourself the trouble and just move.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, council requests, comments, and written reports. Councilmember Vega.
I have nothing to report today.
Councilmember Humdo.
I have nothing to report.
Councilmember Starbuck.
I'm just going to wish my wife a happy birthday.
All right, happy birthday, Karen. So, Councilmember Mosby.
Nothing to
Okay.
report.
I just have 2 comments. February 25th, I think all the council members received an email. At the Dick Dewey Center from 4 to 6 p.m., there is the Explore Lompoc launch. Explore Lompoc is the new, it'll be a new website from the tourism district that was formed last year to promote Lompoc. So 4 to 6 at the Dick Dewey Center, and make a reservation or let them know you're going to be going there. But I think it's important that as many people from the city go there. And I believe the public is invited as well to that. You'll get to see the new website that they're doing. The promotion is going to promote every business in Lompoc, everything from the wine industry to restaurants, hotels, gas stations, basically promoting Lompoc. So it's and the marketing team that they've hired will be there doing the presentation. The other thing I just want to report is last week, city administrator and myself gave a tour of the city facilities to Supervisor Carbajal, and he admits that he had never really spent any time in Lompoc, but I think it's safe to say that he was very surprised in what this city had to offer. So we're glad to see him, and I think we'll see a couple more tours from other people because he posted on his website, and I've already had calls from other
Candidates?
No, not candidates, but other people in upper offices that would like to come and tour. So, okay, if there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned to a special council meeting workshop on February 24th at 6:30 p.m.